Got one today. All right, so, oh, wow. I talked about, I don't know if you watched it, Steinbeck and the Grapes of Wrath and some of the things about the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl. And I do have a couple videos here. This one is on the bonus army, the bonus march, okay? And I talked about it, just a quick review. Remember, we gave people $1.25, veterans, $1.25 for every day they served overseas, $1 for every day they served at home, and then they could borrow against that. And but the rest of the money wasn't available until 1945. So when the Depression hit, all these veterans show up at the Capitol to support this bill that's going to bring $500 for them all. And they're, these people are broke. Okay. So Hoover, in the end, the bill doesn't pass. A bunch of them stay, and this turns ugly. And I'll let the video kind of explain it.
Americans, already tired of Hoover's pessimistic and cautious approach, then became outraged by his treatment of a group of World War I veterans in 1932. After the war, Congress issued veterans bonus certificates for their military service worth nearly $1,000 to be redeemed in 1945. Dismayed by the economic outlook of the time, the veterans demanded the immediate payment of their bonuses in full. In an attempt to satisfy their demand, Texas Congressman Wright Patman proposed a bill in which the government would immediately give veterans $500 in cash instead. To show their support of Patman's plan, between 10 and 20,000 veterans and their families peacefully marched to Washington, D.C. This so-called bonus army established a shanty town inside the Capitol building. Hoover provided food and supplies for them, but when Congress vetoed the bill on June 17th, he asked the bonus army to leave. Most left, but approximately 2,000 stayed behind, hoping to meet with Hoover. During the riot, Hoover ordered General Douglas MacArthur and the 12th Infantry Force to remove the veterans. Shocked Americans saw troops use bayonets and tear gas to force the vets to leave. In the melee, more than 1,000 people were gassed, an 8-year-old boy blinded, and an 11-month-old baby was killed. The shantytown burned to the ground. Public support for Hoover foundered, and with a chance to change direction, Americans overwhelmingly embraced a new president in Franklin Delano Roosevelt, popularly known as FDR.
Okay. So yeah, that's kind of the outcome of the shantytown. It's very rare, guys, for the United States Army to be called out on its citizens like this. Hoover already unpopular. This is just going to make his election chances basically nil. I think one commentator put it this way. He wrote a telegram to Hoover, and he said, vote for Roosevelt and make it unanimous. Because the only vote Hoover was going to get was his own. Okay, now that's not accurate, but he was very unpopular, and this kind of helped to solidify that. So we've got some history here. Okay, now the British calling out the troops, during the Boston Massacre. That's the British. Okay, but can you think of any other times in American history where the U.S. Army, this is the 12th Infantry that was called out, not the National Guard. Okay, so like in some of the recent riots and unrest and stuff we've had around the country, governors have the right to use the National Guard. Okay, we have the Kansas National Guard, Arkansas has a National Guard, every state has a National Guard. Okay, and so there are times when there's unrest, or even say like a bad tornado in Kansas, Greensburg tornado. The National Guard was mobilized to go help with the cleanup and the victims. Okay, so there's not really many instances of the U.S. Army being used on domestic soil. In fact, it's illegal for the president to do that. Okay, now the National Guard is different. These are people that live in your community, that live in your state, that serve in the National Guard, okay? Now, one of the more famous things, and I don't know if you guys ever heard of Kent State, Ohio? You heard of Kent State? Okay. Back in 1971, there were a lot of Vietnam War protests going on our college campuses, okay? And Kent State was no different. After a few months of this, the governor of Ohio said, you know, listen, we need to go back to school and stop this unrest on our college campus. And so they said, no more protests. Okay. Well, what do young people that are passionate do when you tell them not to protest? They protest. Okay. So the protest came, the National Guard was called out. Okay. And things are being thrown at the National Guard and so forth. And listen, these college campus kids are 18, 19, 20, 22 years old. The National Guardsmen, 18, 19, 20, 22 years old. Okay? And something was thrown at one of the guardsmen, and he opened fire. Other guardsmen heard shots fired. They opened fire. The next thing you know, you got 4 dead people on the campus of Kent State University. Okay? Now this is not good. Okay? And does anybody know who was president at the time? Richard Nixon was president. Okay? And so, you know, this just kind of made things worse. Okay? And Neil Young wrote a song about it. Of course, you don't know who Neil Young is, do you? Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. Heard of them? Home with your parents. Okay. Well, since you don't know, this is history. One of the things you learn in history is that the Vietnam era was filled with kind of anti-war music. Okay? And if I go to YouTube and I type in Ohio and Young, it comes up. And I'm going to play this for you. You may have heard it. Okay. That's Neil Young right there. Right. Oops. Moved the wrong one there. Okay. Are you going away or not? Did I go this way? Why is that there? Okay. There we go. All right. So maybe one other example I want to give you of this happening. This was in 1995. Any of you guys ever heard of Branch Davidian Compound in Waco, Texas? Ever hear this story? David Koresh was.
There's a show on Netflix about it.
Yeah, I watched it. Yeah, it was really good. Because I knew the story and I remember the event. Yeah. Have you seen it too?
I haven't seen it, but I've heard about it.
Yeah. So yeah, watch it. I don't know what it's called, but Waco. Okay, Waco is, Waco, Texas, where Baylor University is, but outside of town, David Koresh was a cult leader. Okay, now cults in this country, because of freedom of speech and freedom of religion and so forth, or you can start your own cult. You know what I mean? It's freedom of religion, and he had followers. Okay, now David Koresh built this compound. As you know, several buildings and houses, and you know, they did things like he married some of the girls and stuff like that. But these people all believed in him. And he also had begun to stockpile guns. Okay, and guys, we have something called the Second Amendment, where you're allowed to own guns, and really, the Second Amendment doesn't say how many guns you're allowed to own. Okay, so he had a bunch of guns out there, and the FBI wanted to talk to him. And basically, they went out there, and he said, "Don't come here. Don't come on my land, or you're going to have a fight." So there was this standoff. Okay, now in '95, the only cable news network was CNN. Fox wasn't around, MSNBC wasn't around yet, so it was CNN. And it was like standoff, day 12, Waco, Texas. Okay, then standoff, day 35, Waco, Texas. And CNN's like a mile back, and they're zooming in with their cameras on this compound and stuff. On April 19th, 1995, maybe it's 93, forgive me. April 19th, the Attorney General of the United States, Janet Reno, you don't have to write this down, but sent in the ATF, the FBI. They had a tank, they had attack helicopters, and a gun battle ensued. One of the buildings caught on fire, and a bunch of the followers of Koresh burned to death. Okay. What did the government want? They wanted their guns, right? They wanted to check up on the guns. Okay. Now this is I'm going with 93. Okay, 1993. Okay. Anyone? This is the Battle of Lexington and Concord. And the British left Boston, headed to Lexington and Concord, looking mainly for two individuals, John Hancock, and Sam Adams. And what did those two have out at Lexington and Concord? Guns and powder. So the British government was going out there to seize those arsenals on April 19, 1775. In Waco, Texas, the government was going out there to seize David Koresh's arsenal. The optics here are not good. Okay, a lot of innocent people died that day. All right, and Janet Reno, the Attorney General, should have known better than to pick April 19th to do this. It looks bad. Okay, 2 years later, a deranged young man named Timothy McVeigh decided to exact revenge against the federal government by blowing up the federal building in Oklahoma City for what happened in Waco. Now, what the son of a bitch, excuse my French, didn't realize or didn't care, there was a lot of innocent people in that building and a daycare center on the first floor. There were people that worked in this building brought their children before they went to work. Okay, and the worst domestic terrorist attack in American history. Okay. April 19th, Okay? I get an email from Coach Loveon every year. It's April 19th. All right. Sorry, that's kind of freaky, right? All right. So, moving on. I got more videos. Are you okay with that? All right, this one deals with the Dust Bowl, okay? Here we go.
Then, to make matters even worse, drought, coupled with the overproduction of crops in the Great Plains, turned the area from Texas to Oklahoma into a dust bowl. In 1934, strong
I'm gonna
winds
back that
blew
up.
tons of dust from the plains all the way to the East Coast. Dust even coated New York City, and with the overproduction of crops in the Great Plains, turned the area from Texas to Oklahoma into a dust bowl. In 1934, strong winds blew tons of dust from the plains all the way to the East Coast. Dust even coated New York City and settled on ships 500 miles out to sea in the Atlantic Ocean. Unemployment and poverty hurt everyone, especially children. Many left school to work and help their families survive, and many more went hungry and malnourished. Diet-related illnesses like rickets and scoliosis became all too common. Once again, President Hoover tried to reassure the nation by saying, recovery is just around the corner. But it was not to be, and more Americans grew disenchanted with his policies and administration. Secretary of the Treasury, Andrew Mellon, echoed the beliefs of most of Hoover's advisors, that the economy would recover on its own. Hoover thought the government must take some action, but feared making government too strong, and so he chose a conservative approach, calling together business, banking, and labor leaders and urging them to work together and avoid laying off workers or calling strikes. Then he authorized the expenditure of federal funds for large public works projects, like Boulder Dam, later renamed Hoover Dam, to create jobs and wages for thousands of workers. Hoover felt giving direct help to needy Americans would undermine their self-respect and looked to private charities to help the hungry. Instead, he approved more than $2 billion in emergency financing to businesses, hoping their renewed success would trickle down to the people who needed assistance. It didn't. Rather, unemployment rose even higher, and Americans were caught in a web of despair.
Okay. So you guys were here the day when I talked about Hoover's, like his background, his life, right? How he was kind of a self-made man and so forth, and how he would loan money to people but not give them. Now, the public works programs like the Hoover Dam or the Boulder Dam at the time, those were things that the next president's going to do as well. Okay, Roosevelt. So what's he going to do? Okay, what are we going to see Hoover try and accomplish here? Now, $2 billion on roads, building, the construction, that's going to give people jobs. Okay, when you say public works, okay, public meaning government, works meaning jobs. Okay, so this is just the government building stuff, and those people that want jobs and need jobs are getting jobs. Okay, this isn't private industry, this is government doing it. Okay, there's a difference. So $2 billion on that, okay, that's going to be relief for some people. Okay, my grandfather, during the Depression, went west. He was a welder, okay, and he helped build, I think, a couple of dams, and then he helped build a lighthouse out in California that's still standing, okay. So a lot of these were government jobs that people benefited from, okay. It's not going to get us out of the Depression, but it's kind of a Band-Aid, okay. It covers the symptoms temporarily, okay, but it doesn't heal the problem. So then he comes up with the Reconstruction Finance Corporation that is going to loan money to banks, railroads, and other businesses. The goal here is if you can keep businesses afloat, people will have jobs. So they're loaning money to the businesses to stay afloat, okay? But not giving them money. You see the difference? Okay. Big difference here. So by 1932, do you think we had bulldozers? We had bulldozers. Yeah, big bulldozers. Yeah, cranes and stuff like that. They weren't not like the ones we have today. Okay. So you see all these guys with wheelbarrows. Could this have been done with machinery? Most likely. Okay, but this is dignity in work. People have jobs. Okay, so listen, guys. Your great grandparents that may have lived through the Depression, they were different than our generation. When this happened, and people lost their jobs, or lost their homes, or their ability to care for their families, who did they blame? They blamed themselves. They didn't blame somebody else. They didn't blame government. They didn't blame the rich. They blamed themselves. Okay, so people, you know, they're willing to do whatever work there is available. They will take anything. Okay, most people, all right? And so this is very difficult on the psyche of the American working person. You know what I mean? That they can't find work, that they can't sustain their families. This is hard on the soul of America. Okay? And so even though this isn't going to solve the situation, it is a temporary fix. Okay? And people are willing to do it. Now the railroads are going to be a place where people will, you know, ride for free to escape wherever they are. You know what I mean? And so there were bands of people going up and down on the railroads. They hired police and so forth to keep the people off the cars and stuff like that. I'll have another video for you guys on the Depression. That same video series, how many of you guys watched the Century one I showed? Or Century, okay. That was 1920 to 1929. There's another one that goes 1930 to 36, okay? And now the problem with that one is it kind of jumps ahead to Adolf Hitler, which we're not going to talk about yet, okay? But it's not bad to foreshadow some of that stuff. So I may make that available as well for you guys, but not make it due for a while. So normally what I do in a normal school year when I show a video like that, I just give you 2 points for watching it in class instead of working on calculus or something else. You know what I mean? If you stay awake and watch it and don't work on something else, you get 2 points. There's no way for me to do that. That's why I asked you to write something about it. You know what I mean? To tell me you watched it. Now, some of your responses were better than others. Some of yours were kind of shallow. All right, the Federal Home Loan Bank Act. Those are good videos, those Century videos, okay? In fact, one person I had, not in this class or not in this group, said, that was really good. Can we watch another one? The Federal Home Loan Bank Act. Okay, Hoover did admit one of the great tragedies of the Depression is homelessness. Okay, it really is. People losing something they had worked so hard to obtain. Okay, and let's say you have a mortgage of $20,000 and you've paid off $10,000 of it. Okay, and you lose your home. Okay, it's a sad situation. So the Federal Home Loan Bank Act is to try and help people with their mortgages. This won't be successful. Minutes till game time. Yeah, they're playing 2 o'clock out in Oakland. All right. Again, this just reiterates Hoover, okay, his limitations. He refused to give money directly to individuals. Now, he feels it's dangerous to get people in the habit of receiving charity from the federal government. That they would become dependent on the government for their subsistence. He felt that this would injure the spiritual response of the American people. As I told you before, guys, the federal government didn't do much back then. And so the federal government, national government's never been used in that capacity. Okay, and Hoover wasn't willing to go there. Roosevelt will be. Okay, it will change the face of America. Now, do you think through our welfare programs that we've had over the last 5-6 decades that we have had groups of people that have become solely dependent on government for their subsistence? I mean, Hoover's right here, yes? It's a matter as a nation figuring out what we're going to do to help people during this depression. And today, what we do to help people out that are struggling and are poor. So we look at our welfare system and say, okay, this is a safety net to help people that fall on hard times. Okay, and it's done through the federal government and also through state government. Okay, prior to this, it used to be done by charities, by your church. Your neighbors would help you if you fell on hard times. Okay, there was no safety net. Okay, and Hoover was fearful of building that safety net from the national government. Okay. Now you see this big dust storm, yeah? Okay, some of your great grandparents, maybe if you have really old grandparents, experienced this. The worst year was probably 1935 for the dust storm. Okay. Now the proper term for a dust storm is a haboob. Haboob. A haboob. Or if you saw the Tom Cruise Mission Impossible 3, he's in like in Dubai and the dust storm comes, the haboob. All right. I'm going to show you this really cool video of a haboob. This is in Arizona about 9 years ago. It's got some really creepy music to it, okay? But it's kind of cool. All right. This is daylight, okay? This is daylight hours, you'll see. pitch black. Isn't that crazy?
Why did they drag it?
Just so we could show you guys, right?
Man, I couldn't see. I just start crying.
So you guys, I know you took Kansas history in like 7th grade or something like that, right? Probably the hardest class I took in graduate school was Kansas history at Wichita State. The professor's name was Dr. Craig Miner. He literally wrote the book on Kansas history, like 9 of them. Guys, when you get to college, if the professor wrote the textbook that you're using, transfer out and get a different class, okay? Because they know way too much about the subject, and they're going to expect you to know, okay? Dr. Miner, rest in peace. He's since passed on, but man, it was a cool class. I mean, the stories he told were amazing, but his tests were just unbelievable. So he talked about the Dust Bowl, of course, and you hear the stories about just like the dust. You can't keep it out. You know, you can't keep it out of the house. And so when children would breathe in that dust, it was really hard on kids and the elderly, right? And so you'd be literally coughing up dirt. They would have to put wet blankets over the windows, over the doors to try and keep the dust out. It still didn't work. Babies in the crib, you would put a wet blanket over the baby's crib to try and keep the air clean with their breathing. And it caused a lot of health problems for people. But one of the story that he talks about, you know, the grasshoppers, the plague, you know what I mean? You see them at the end of the summer. There's been a bunch recently, right? When it gets dry, and they're hard. They, you know, sometimes they'll fly into you, and you're like, you know what I'm talking about? And some of them are big. Well, when it was in the 1880s, we had a really bad infestation of these grasshoppers. And the ones that came through then had like this white belly on, okay? And so when they came in by the millions, it looked like a snowstorm, but and they would eat everything. Anything that was wood fencing, shovel, you got a wood handle, it would eat everything. Okay, and this happened for a couple of years that they had these grasshopper infestations. And then one year, I think it was 1882, they had a really early cold front come through, like freezing cold, okay? And basically killed most of the grasshoppers. So they didn't come back the following year, okay? You know, it froze early. And so that saved people from that later on. But there's a place in Africa right now, I don't know if you guys heard this story anywhere, but they've had a really bad year of these grasshoppers, and they're eating all the crops, they're eating everything. And it's really bad. I forget which, I think it's in East Africa. They're having a problem with these right now as we speak. Okay? So we don't want that again, right? Let's get some rain and get an early freeze, and it'll kill all those buggers. Okay, I got time for one more little thing here, okay? So the worst drought, 1930 in recent history, okay? And so farmers are already having a hard time, right? The drought, then you get the Dust Bowl. And you guys know there's reasons beyond the drought for the Dust Bowl, right? Some of those are farming practices, right? We tend to rotate our crops now, plant different things in them. It helps preserve the soil. And then we planted all the trees, right? You know how we have these lines of trees to kind of create windbreaks and that sort of thing. So we've definitely learned from history on that. That's a good thing, right? But Congress votes 45 million to help the farmers feed their livestock. Okay, when the crops start to dry up, they don't have feed for their animals. But they oppose giving $25 million to farmers and their families. Wait a second, so we'll feed the animals, but we won't feed the people? What's the logic here? Oh, you keep the livestock alive so that the people can eat the lives. I got you. On the surface, this seems pretty heartless, right? But there's some logic to it. Finally, they do allow loans. Again, loans to farmers. Okay. So, guys, by the time Hoover's, getting ready for run for re-election, it's just things are really bad. By 1932, when they have the election, we are hitting the depths, the bottom. Certainly with the stock market, and then Dust Bowl, and farmers being lost, foreclosures, homelessness, Hooverville. Okay, it's a tough time. And if you don't have a lot of work tomorrow, you should watch Cinderella Man. That's the one about the boxer during the Depression, okay? And it, more than any movie I've ever seen, it really portrays what the Depression did to families, okay? And individuals. So, and it's just an excellent movie, okay? Especially if you like fighting like I do. It is sad, but at the end it's good.
But it's sad the whole time. The wife is always mad.
She's trying to hold it together. It's tough. All right. Hey, have a good mini Friday.